guest today is a well-rounded professional with over 13 years of experience as a strategic interventionist and relationship coach, with an impressive track record of running over 500 groups and working with several thousand individuals. He has established himself as a trusted advisor in personal development and transformative coaching. Through his expertise and compassionate approach, he empowers people to overcome challenges and achieve their goals, fostering healthier relationships and personal growth. With a deep commitment to helping others unlock their full potential, he continues to make a profound impact on the lives of those he works with, creating lasting and meaningful transformations. Circles, could you please help me welcome our guest today, our masterclass, Troy DaRonco. Troy, my brother, thank you. Let's show some love for Troy in the house. Appreciate you being here today, brother. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me, Jeff. It is fantastic to be here. It's so great to see so much movement on the platform today. So many people joining us. I am so grateful for Circles.
Yeah.
When I go in and read the testimonials, say things like saved my life, saved my relationship, got me back on track.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah, and we're so glad you're a part of it. Lives are being transformed. And remember, when I first met Irad, he was sharing, who's the CEO of Circles, he was sharing about how he visited his mom when she was going through cancer. And he noticed that he was able to make an impact, but there was still something missing, Troy. And he walked in one time and she was on the phone with a friend of hers who was also going through cancer. And he said, Jeff, I saw that she was connected to this other person more than she was me, meaning that she was connected with someone else who was going through what she was going through. And that's the idea that birthed Circles, helping people get through difficult life situations with other people who get you and are experiencing the same thing. So it's been a profound journey for us. But we are so glad you're here with us, Troy. I wonder if you do me a favor. I wonder if you could take a moment to unpack you. Tell us a little bit about you. I've read your bio, but I'd love to hear it in your own words, kind of your journey and what's led you here today, Troy. If you don't mind sharing, please.
Unpack me. Well, I'm glad you didn't set the bar very high, Jeff. Wow, man. Okay. Well, my name is Troy, and I'm 51. No, forget it.
There we go. Start at the basics, brother. Start at the basics.
Exactly. So I'm going to dive right in because I want to get into the work and the meat of what we're up to today. I'm here with all of you because my journey started with parents who didn't know how to communicate. And that was such a difficult place to be as a really sensitive boy, to grow up in a house where strife was so commonplace, and parents who didn't understand. We didn't have a lot of books back then. We didn't have the internet back then when we could go online and learn about things like the 5 love languages, for instance. They had no idea what the other needed. And so I watched that for many years, and I replicated that in my earliest relationships through my 20s until I got to about 34 and recognized this isn't working. I have to find a way to do this better so that I can respect my partner and so that I can respect me. So I started on a very deliberate journey towards developing my interpersonal skills, what somebody else needs, how I can show up, what my boundaries, and maybe more importantly, what my standards are. One of my rules for my life is I teach people how to treat me. And I always am mindful of that when I am in front of someone.
Wow. I just want to go, you just dropped a bomb on us. I teach people. Say that again.
I teach people how to treat me.
Did you just catch that, friends? I teach people how to treat me. Go on, brother. Go on. Sorry, that's just profound. I just dropped it in the chat. Go ahead.
All good. I appreciate that, Jeff.
Yeah.
So I want to do a little shout out of my own. So that family that I was raised in, 2 weeks before my senior year of high school, some really difficult things happened inside my home, and I needed to leave for my own well-being. And I had somewhere to go. and that was to my aunt's house. It makes me feel very emotional, but she is on the call with me today. Penny, welcome. Great to have you here. Thank you. I think you'll find her under Burdell. So she'll be embarrassed that I gave her a shout out, but that's okay. I get to harass her now and again because I love her. As my mom used to say, I yell because I care.
I yell because I care. I love it. Thank you, Michelle, for being here. I love this. Go ahead. Go ahead, Troy. Tell us more.
So I had somewhere to go when things got really rough. And what it made clear to me was one person can really, really make a difference. It sounds like Irad's mom had that same experience. One person, all the difference. Just somebody to hear me, validate me, see me. It's what we all need.
Yeah. So continue in that journey, because I know you and I've had some moments to talk, Troy. I've got a peek inside of your growing up process. Not to go too deep that's uncomfortable for you, but give us a little bit more of the idea of that journey, because it hasn't always been smooth for you at all, has it? Growing up and finding yourself and getting through different crisis moments that you've gone through in your life.
That's very right. And the one thing that I know about the human journey for all of us is we all hit transition points in our lives, points where we essentially are forced to grow. And those happened a few times. So I have a family member who was murdered when I was 26 years old. And that was the biggest catalyst, I think, in addition to my upbringing, to understanding the importance of communication in relationships. And that loss left me without words. I didn't know how to express myself. I had no clue how to quantify that level of grief and loss. And so I went on a mission to figure out how to be with people in extreme change. I like focusing on loss when I'm working with someone, not grief. I find grief to be pretty slippery. It's hard to wrap my head around. But loss, somehow my brain and my heart, it gets it. I have tangible things. I can lose my keys. I can lose my phone. So my brain's like, I get this. Not here anymore. And once we can get clear on that, it's not here. They're not here anymore. Now we can start the process of sort of teasing out or unwinding some of the pieces, parts that are most painful for us.
Yeah.
Things we need to say, things we wish we had said or done.
Yeah.
Bringing that into the conversation.
Yeah. You know, you and I've had these conversations, profound conversations, about people who are stuck in their journey. Right, Troy? And I remember you and I having some conversations. And friends, I just want to give you a peek inside of my relationship with Troy and how I met him. I was at a stage in my life where I had experienced a profound loss. This happened to be a loss in business. Now, it just wasn't business for me. It was what I believed was my life mission. And there's one thing to fail, but there's another thing to fail at what you believe you were created and called to do. So when you face failure at your own identity, it can rock your soul. And I remember talking to Troy, and he started to look into my life and ask me some severe questions that caused me to go inward and realize that I was blocking myself, that I was sticking myself in this place, and I was the one who was not choosing to get out of where I was at. Now, I know we just jumped in the deep end of the pool, Troy, but I see you, and I've watched your coaching sessions. This is what you do with people, right? You help them out of this stuck place and get them into this more fruitful place in their lives. Yes?
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the old adage, right? I can't see the forest for the trees. Or as a friend of mine said this morning, we were on a business call, and he said, it's like being inside the jar. You can't read the label. I thought, what a great way of looking at, I'm in it, but I can't get out of it. I don't have enough information. I don't see the path. And that's what I love doing with people is helping them to see those scotomas or blind spots where maybe they're not understanding that they're doing what they're doing because it's meeting a need.
Mm-hmm.
To the outside world, it may look like it makes no sense. Why would it be meeting a need? And yet, I believe humans never waste energy. Everything we do is intentional. It gets us something. For instance, I work with a great number of people who are working through depression. Please notice I use those words very deliberately. Working through depression. I don't have depression because I don't want it. I have a truck. I'm happy to claim that. That's my truck. But I don't claim those parts of me that I don't want. So I'm working through depression. But what am I getting out of depression? And most people would say, I'm not getting anything. But if we really look inside, what I see often is people who are depressed, it's a way to receive love from themselves and from others. It's a way to get attention, and sometimes magnificently so. Depending upon our tribe of people, depending upon our health care, we can get a lot of attention by having problems. And humans are wired for connection. If I don't know how to get someone's attention positively with just by being who I am, I may adopt some challenges or problems in my life to be able to get that need for connection made.
Yeah. So well said. Friends, if you're just joining us, we are talking to Troy DaRonco. He is a relationships coach, but please do not get lost in that title. He is more than that. He's talking about really coming to face grips with who we are, what led us to this place. And one of the things profoundly you just said, Troy, and I wrote it in the chat, friends, is I don't claim those parts of me that I don't want. I wonder if you could just drill down into that a second, because let me preface this with, I know everybody here on the app, we're personal development people, right? We want to know more. We want to know how. But I know on my own personal journey, I've read somebody's book, I've heard somebody's tape, I've listened to somebody's podcast, and I go, I've heard all that before. But yet, if I don't tune in, or if I do tune in, they're telling me what I need to know. And I think this is one of those statements that we need to hear again, Troy, right? I don't claim the parts of me that I don't want. Drill down into that a little bit more and help us understand what that truly means and how to apply it.
So, Jeff, I want to say thank you for that catch, because I'm very familiar with this work, and yet I recognize many of you might not be. And some of you in self-development may say, wait a minute, I'm not denying any part of myself. So thank you for the catch.
Yeah, of course.
What I'm offering is recognize it. Notice that it's there. But if I say to my mind that, well, let me back up. The subconscious mind hates losing things. It doesn't matter whether or not you want it gone. For instance, I may say, I want to lose weight. And the subconscious mind says, to heck you do. We're not doing that. I don't like losing things. This is not okay. It's not safe. So I'm getting leaner. I'm shedding pounds. I'm moving forward in my weight journey. I'm not denying the fact that I may want to become leaner, but I'm very mindful of my language as I move into that journey. So I'm not ignoring it. I'm not denying it. I'm recognizing what it is. And then I'm wrapping words around it that give it new context, perhaps new meaning, and defining it in a way that I can then take action from.
Yeah.
Does that feel right, Jeff?
It feels so right. I love the chat, Troy. It's blowing up. I love what I'm reading it. Somebody dropped in the chat about, hang on, let me find it. Remember, you are not, Bob did. Remember, you are not your emotions. Emotions are only temporary and will pass. Bob, you make me think of my mama used to tell me all the time, Jeffrey, this too shall pass. Now, I want to take you on. I want to take you and I, Troy. When I first met you, and friends, please hear this. I don't know where we found you at your stage of life in this conversation, But I believe that this is profound, the timing for this, because I believe a lot of us here on this call today, you're facing something in your life that you've been facing for too long. You've been struggling trying to find your way through it. And it's my belief, and I believe Troy's belief as well, that together we're all going to find a light bulb that's going to turn on in us before we leave. So hold on to that thought. Troy, I remember when meeting you, I was so deep in my own pain. I don't know if anybody can relate in the house tonight, but I was so deep in my own pain, I couldn't hear myself say what I was saying. And one of the profound things that I've picked up on you and my work with you as a coach is that you have the profound ability to listen past what I'm saying. And I'll never forget, you and I were in a coaching session, and I was talking and talking and talking. And you said to me, Jeff, finally you got my attention. You said, Jeff, I've called your name 3 times, and you didn't hear me because you were so lost in your story. How do we help people who are lost deep in their story, Troy? How do we get their attention? How does somebody get our attention to shake us, if you would, so that we can open up and see the light and start taking steps in the right direction? I know that's a mouthful, but I think you got what I was putting down. Yes?
I did. And first I want to say thanks for bringing your story in and contextualizing this. I know for me, sometimes when I'm an MC, I can sort of disassociate myself from the conversation. So I want to appreciate you for bringing in your own personal story and really humanizing this.
Yeah,
Appreciate
you're welcome,
that.
brother. Yeah, you're welcome. We're in this together, brother. We're all in this together. Come on, Circles team. We're all in this together tonight.
Yeah.
Talk to us, Coach. Help us
So,
get through this difficult place.
Oftentimes, people can talk to us, people can talk at us. This is going to sound very blunt, so I'm going to apologize for my directness, but sometimes we haven't suffered enough to be able to hear. And that can be really difficult to face. And yet I know for me, there are times where I just sort of keep my life on a low burn, and I don't actually let things come up to the surface and get loud enough for me to pay attention to them and work on. Meanwhile, I'm suffering. So I really work to bring emotions up, intensify them, work on them, and ultimately in effort to sort of burn them out. But most of us in uncomfortable emotions, we keep them low, we keep them quiet. Again, we try and keep that flame turned down. Finding a coach, finding a therapist, finding a close friend who will advocate for you, not for themselves, making it about you, and be able to have that conversation and do a clearing around the story that you're telling yourself, getting clear around that story that you're telling yourself. In fact, it's a really powerful tool, and I want to thank Brene Brown for bringing that tool into my life. Brene is a vulnerability researcher, and I use this tool in some way, shape, or form, often with people, including myself. The story I'm telling myself is, and then I share whatever is in my heart and on my mind, because now I can do it from a place of agency. I can do it from a place of advocating for myself, but not perhaps projecting onto the other person. For anybody who's ever been in a relationship with a man, and I know we have a lot of women on this call, one of the things that we as men tend to do is we get angry to be able to gain the courage to speak our emotional truth. That tool, the story I'm telling myself, can sometimes help be a workaround to him not getting angry to speak his truth. So I would say, hey, Jeff, the story I'm telling myself is, and then spill it. And then I would do an invitation. I'm really big on invitations, inviting people in. People love being invited into things that feel mostly safe. It's okay to be a little uncomfortable. But hey, Jeff, what's the story you're telling yourself? And then just whatever comes, comes. I don't judge it in the moment. I'm just listening and absorbing.
Yeah. Speaking of listening and absorbing, let's just take a moment, friends, and just sit in that. I don't think we make space enough to just sit in what hits us. I remember, Troy, during that coaching session with you and I, after you got my attention, I mean, when you said, Jeff, I've been calling your name 3 times, that statement haunted me for 3 weeks afterward, Troy. And every moment that I spent by myself in the early morning hours in the trails, your voice reverberated in my mind. And I heard you say, Jeff, I've called your name. And I started to go to work on me. And that's when the story that I was telling myself, Troy, started to surface. And for the first time ever, I heard it from a third-party perspective. Friends, if you haven't heard how you sound from a third-party perspective, meaning you have distanced, separated yourself from you enough to listen to you, once you can get to that stage, it will profoundly impact your life. And I don't want to share my version of why, Troy, and then I want you to share your version. What I feel is that when we finally make that separation, hearing ourselves from a third-party perspective of how we sound, our higher self, our whole self, our healed self hears. And then they have compassion on our self that's still stuck. And now all of a sudden we're working in unity with our higher self to bring healing to our soul so that we can continue to elevate to a higher place. Yes? Does that make sense, Troy?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's absolutely right. We have all taken on stories from when we were young and that become further developed as we age. And then when we hit extreme pain points in our lives, like you did, not all that long ago, Jeff, when we hit pain points, our mind and our ego says, I have to lock this down. This world isn't safe. The universe isn't safe for me. The strategies that I used as a kid that worked, often we keep employing. I keep employing, and they don't work anymore. But dang it, I'm gonna do my best to make that round peg fit into that square hole.
Yeah.
So, yes, exactly, Jeff. Having that coach, that therapist, that friend, to be able to say, hey, would you listen to me? Would you deep listen to this story that I'm telling myself? What do you hear? Give me the truth back. I can handle it because I've suffered enough.
Yeah. I didn't drop that point in the chat, friend, but I hope you heard it. Sometimes I don't know why suffering brings about such great miraculous power in the human soul and spirit, but it does. I would not sign up for it again, friend. If I get to do this journey again, I'm going to skip the suffering part. But guess what? I probably will never get to skip the suffering part, right, Troy? Because the suffering is a part of the parts that makes us the whole, right? I absolutely love it. I wonder if I could shift just this half a second. Bob, I appreciate you. Just dropped in the chat. Listen to this, friends. Men, especially older ones, were taught to never show emotion, and apparently only anger is or was the only acceptable outlet because showing feelings of an almost human nature will not do. So well said. I think, Troy, that's that men were taught to hold in emotions. I knew I grew up that with my father, but you said something that I put in the chat as well. So the process that I heard you say is a man sometimes has to get angry enough. Our female and women gender, this is in the house, and all other genders in our house today, just listen. You have to get angry enough to then find the courage enough to speak the truth that's in your heart. Yes, is that the process that I understood correctly?
Very, very often that is the case.
Yeah.
We either go at it like a bull in a china shop through our anger, or we go to sadness, retreat, and expect our partner to come seek us out and rescue us. Those are the two methods I see most often.
Oh, gosh, I wish you just, oh gosh, friends. I'm guilty. Anybody else in the house guilty of that? I'm guilty. I'm going to throw my little temper tantrum, Troy, and I'm going to sit in my room with my door closed. And all the while I'm sitting in the room, door closed, I'm wishing that she comes in. But guess what? She doesn't come in. She doesn't come in. They don't come. I wrote a blog one time. She ain't coming. And it was exactly that. I'm sitting at the train station, my bag packed. I'm waiting for that person in my life to show up to rescue me. And what if, friends, your rescuer never shows up? Now, Troy,
Then you better turn into your own rescuer.
Oh, come on. Say that one more time.
Then you had better turn into your own rescuer.
Oh, okay. Coach, help us there. How do I turn myself? Anybody else in the house want to know how to do that? How do we turn ourselves into our own rescuer, Troy? Coach us a little bit in that.
One of the things that I do every day to work to be my own rescuer is I journal.
Yes.
So I have 2 writing methods that I use. One is journaling, and it's the day-to-day things. It's this was really hard on me today, and here's why. I start my journal with my mood for the moment. Where am I at? So if I read it a year from now, I'm not reading it in the emotion that I was in or am in. I can go back and go, oh, there's the context for that. I also do free writing. And what free writing is, I sit down with a question, usually in front of my computer. I ask myself the question, I close my eyes, and I start to type. I don't worry about spelling, punctuation, anything. The whole point is to just get it out of me and bypass the ego, get in touch with my soul and spirit, and just keep going. And what comes out, oh, and by the way, I set a timer. For me, it's 20 minutes, and it is amazing how fast 20 minutes can go by. I can do 4 to 6 pages in that time. And when I go back and read it, it's like, I didn't know that was in me. I didn't know that revelation or truth were there for me. So being able to journal, being able to free write, making it part of my wellness program every day. I also walk almost every day. That's a big piece too, is being out in the world. But the journaling is a great way to get to know yourself and what your story is. And very likely you'll start to see patterns if you're consistent enough. Words that you use, and it's like, well, that's not very empowering or kind or compassionate or empathetic. You can start replacing the words. You can start creating a better narrative for your life and what it is that you want. One of the things that I know is when I ask somebody what they want, when we're on a coaching call, almost invariably the first thing they will do is they will tell me what they don't want or what they're afraid of. And that's true for all of us because we want to push against that which we don't want.
Yeah.
And most of us aren't willing to claim what we want. Worthiness.
Go ahead. Stay right there, brother. Stay in that vein. Talk to us about worthiness. Anybody in the house? I just got to ask. Anybody in the house ever look at yourself in the mirror and think that you're not worth it? I don't care how much money you got. I don't care how successful you feel. The most successful people in the world feel like they're not worth. Coach, talk us through this unworthiness stuff, so some of us, all of us, can capture what we need to start loving this one that looks back at themselves in the mirror.
I want to thank Alex for her post in the chat, always going after unavailable individuals. But this is where I'd like to do some deep listening with Alex for just a moment and say, Alex, if you're willing, could you look at those places in your life where it isn't that they who are unavailable, it's you who are unavailable? And how does that show up for you? And so
that's a great question.
So if you can take some time, maybe even later on today, Alex, sit down with that. And I just brought that up because Alex, the timing was perfect. For all of us, Alex points to those words that hold a lot of energy for us, and we tend to repeat them a lot. Unavailable individuals, for instance. If I see that showing up, it's like, okay, I'm perhaps projecting that they're unavailable, but where am I unavailable in my life? I get clear on it, and then I work to flip it. Okay, if I'm unavailable here, perhaps in my friendships, and I'm not sharing what I need, my standards, how can I practice a little bit, lean in just a little bit to being more available to myself and to others? one of the tenets for my life is, if I want something, I have to go first. So if I want other people to be available, I have to be available. And it can be such a hard thing to do because most of us have had a world pointed at us that shows us it isn't particularly safe. And if even if it is safe, a lot of times it isn't comfortable to be available. We go into self-protection.
Yes. Yes. I want to make space. This is a moment that's happening. I want to honor it and make space for it. Alex, did what Troy say, how did that sit with you? How did it feel to you? Would you mind sharing with us? If you're not comfortable, I understand, but if you are, would you share with us how that settled with you or how it resonated with you?
Yeah, can I go to the backyard real quick?
Yeah, if you
Is
can,
that
of
okay?
course.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Friends, let's just show some love. Are we okay? I want to pause. This is a moment right here. This is what I believe that separates circles in everything else. We're not just talking. We want to make sure that healing is flowing. And in this moment, we can help one of our very own right here today. So you get comfortable in a good, safe space, Alex, and then talk to us. You okay with that, Troy?
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. I love what you're putting down, brother. So
Thank you.
many of us are reaching out, trying to find our way out, journaling, rewriting the script. Alex, are you settled? Can you talk to us?
Yes, I just got outside.
Okay.
Okay.
You're safe, yes? You're safe,
Yes, yes,
yes?
yes.
Okay, good, good. Okay, go ahead.
Um, I tend to self-isolate a lot. Um, and I think that's from not being able to trust others. I got out of an abusive relationship, was with a man who was unavailable, and then I kind of replicated my parents' relationship in my adult life. And I think like I've never truly experienced like self-love. And so when Troy said worthiness, that resonated because I don't think that I've ever truly recognized myself as worthy to have standards for myself that weren't just like unavailable individuals. Does that make sense?
It does. So if you were to use a different word or a couple of words other than unavailable that were stand-ins for it, what words might you use?
For me,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's for you, Alex. What other words would you use if you would reframe those words that you're identifying as unavailable? What other words might you use?
I don't know. That's a hard one.
So that's a great example. And again, Alex, I want to thank you for leaning into this.
Yeah.
Without other words, you can't move forward because
Mm-hmm.
there's no target set.
Mm-hmm.
If I want something, I have to have a target for it. And if my belief in relationships is I'm not worthy and the people that I feel worthy around are unavailable, so I'm safe, finding a few words to be able to be stand-ins for unavailable may help you to start feeling more open because now you have a word or words to start moving into, living into. Does that
Mm-hmm.
feel right?
Yes. Yeah, I think I feel isolated fragile, vulnerable.
Yes.
And
So
angry.
vulnerable is, again, I'm going to quote Brene Brown here. Vulnerability is the first thing I want to see in you and the last thing I want to give you. So to build trust, we both need to be somewhat vulnerable.
Yes, and actually I'm reading Brene Brown's book of vulnerability, Atlas of the Heart.
Beautiful book,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful series, actually. You can find it, not sure which one of the platforms, but perfect. Keep going. Brene will help you to really start articulating words that may land better for you than unavailable. I think you said it to us, that safety is there in the unavailableness of the people that you're in. One of the things that I want to offer is, if you are isolating, to me, being of service to other people, going out in the world and maybe working with girls, at-risk girls, whatever you are called to, I know for me, if I'm focused on someone else, my own stuff has to take a back seat, and I can start growing through service. I can start overcoming through service to another. And that could be out in the world, that could be in your own home, that could be at work. But allowing somebody else to be the focus for just a little while. How does that feel, Alex?
Yeah, I think that's something I need to be doing, because it doesn't come naturally to me to like describe what I feel. Like I feel like a lot of the times I just sit in apathy.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see that journaling that you were talking about, Troy, would be a huge tool for Alex, right? To be able to sit with herself. And maybe that's a tool that you could take away from today, Alex, is finding that quiet time, that journaling time, being totally honest. Nobody's looking at your journal but you. And if you really hone in and become self-aware, there's a part of you that when you try to write, Troy had alluded to it before, when you try to write, that judgmental part of you will come up even within your own self and go, I wouldn't write that. Well, what do you mean about that? Well, what if somebody else read that? They might think that. That's your inner critic, your inner judge. She sits at the seat of your being. She tries. But when you allow her space to just pen those words, almost like you're having a conversation with her, interesting you feel that way. Let me make note of that. Wow, I hear you. Let me make note of that. It'll take the severity of the conflict away between that inner you and the you that's trying to find your place. It could be a great tool for you to use if that makes sense to you. Alex, we so appreciate your bravery and your courage to share right
Of
here
course.
with everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Yeah,
Thanks,
you're so
Alex.
very welcome. We have some other comments. Gita, I saw your hand. Troy, are you okay? Can we just sit in this for a moment and let the comments come in? Are you good with that?
I love it.
Perfect. Gita, I saw your hand. Please unmute yourself and share your thoughts. You're live here with Troy and Jeff on Circles. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for taking my question. This is such an excellent subject that to bring myself in this moment. So my question is that when you are fully in this moment, fully focused, do you have any fears? Does your mind says, oh, I should do this and I should do that? Or at that stage, there is absolutely no thoughts? That's one question. And the second question is, oh, I forgot my second question. Oh, the second question is related to the writing. When my thought arises and I'm start writing them, it slows down my thinking process. But believe it or not, even the writing or talking to myself, the both at the end does the same thing, create a feeling. Depends on what I'm thinking. If I'm thinking of what happened to me yesterday, why me, why this, I feel miserable. So is it really necessary to revisit the past? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question. Troy, your thoughts on her comments, questions?
The first one is a really kind of deep end of the pool. So I love that. As far as, if I heard you right, getting the mind to be quiet, that requires actually sitting with the mind. But my experience is the mind and the ego are actually designed to talk to us. They are inputs that are coming to keep us safe by and large, even though sometimes it really may not feel like it. But that's its job. And so when I'm teaching meditation, I teach to listen to the voice, not to shut it off. Here's a metaphor. So you're in your kitchen and you're watching a 4-year-old. The 4-year-old pulls out the pots and pans and grabs the wooden spoons and starts beating the daylights out of the pots and pans. You have a couple of choices in that moment. You can just go about your business and listen to the noise of the kid making fun with the pots and pans. You can get in the way of that child making noise with the pots and the pans and dealing with the consequences of a very upset 4-year-old. Those are the main two. I prefer to just go about my day and listen to that voice, appreciate it, but I'm not going to push back against it, because when I push back against that voice in my head, it pushes back against me.
Thank you. Excellent answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Gita, so much. Thank you, everybody, for staying in this spirit, in this vein that we're in. Paul, I see your hand. Thank you for being patient. And go ahead and unmute yourself. You're live with Troy and Jeff right here in Circles. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jeff, and thank you, Troy. Such an important topic, and I just wanted to weigh in on my personal struggle with unavailability and the question of how are you unavailable really drills down into the heart of the matter for me. I was in a marriage that was really not working for decades, and I eventually left. And I think if I hadn't been in a support group learning boundaries and learning to identify my needs, I would have never made that decision to take care of myself. I'll give you an example of one of the ways that I lacked boundaries and an ability to identify my needs. Somebody was doing some work in my house one day, and this was a long time ago. I walked in and he was stealing my CDs. And I was so embarrassed for him, I pretended I didn't see him. And there was part of me that knew how sick that was, but I couldn't find the words to confront him. And it wasn't until I had gone and gotten help and been in support groups for years that I was able to begin to find the words to have difficult conversations. And that was a game changer for me, was the willingness to have difficult conversations. And I realized that if I can find the right words at the right time and the right tone of voice, there's almost nothing that I can't communicate. And that has changed my life, because I now feel safer walking through it, because I know how to say, that wasn't okay what you did, it hurt my feelings. I don't have to attack them, and I don't have to run away. There's a middle ground.
Yeah. Wow.
I agree with you.
Beautifully said. Go ahead, Troy.
I agree with you. Paul, I want to take a reach here and say, was it safe in your house as a child to be angry?
Does that answer your question? It was not. It was not. I became my mom's therapist at 7 years old, and my dad was an alcoholic. And I learned that the most important thing was to try to keep my family together, which I thought I had the power over. Of course, a 7-year-old doesn't, but I didn't know that. So I grew up worrying about the temperature of the room, the emotional temperature. And I thought that if I could keep everybody happy, I would be safe.
So I'm going to ask you to do what we did with Alex, and that is, what is a different word for temperature? You said take the temperature of the room.
Yeah. Interpret?
I'm going to help you. The
Sure.
word I would use is safety.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Feeling the safety of the room.
Mm-hmm.
We can play down the intensity of an experience so that we feel safer in even our memory of it.
Mm-hmm.
You being your mom's therapist, that's really strong languaging, Paul. Instead of saying, I was there to support my mom at 7, you're taking on a lot and reinforcing that. I don't think that's going to encourage bravery, because then your mother models for you how you show up with women in your life. And if you're being the therapist with your wife and also needing to provide her safety, you're not going to be able to advocate for yourself and set healthy standards for your relationship. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had to learn that the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
And Jeff was saying it earlier, right? Why is it that we have to experience pain and suffering to grow? And I think it's because it really boils down to, I'm going to use another metaphor. If I want bigger biceps, I go to the gym and I push weight. It's resistance. I work to use that word in my head. Instead of pain or suffering, I'm in resistance right now. I'm receiving resistance right now. And then my story can be, this is going to grow me. I don't know how, but it's going to grow me. Let's go. Versus, not going. I'm not willing. And the suffering will increase until I'm ready to pay attention to those things in my life that matter to me, that I want to change, but I'm afraid to change.
Yeah. Paul, I thank you so much for your comments. Gita, I'm going to get to you in just a moment, but when you just said that, thank you very much. When you just said that, Troy, it sparked in me back my sharing my experience with you. I never equated suffering until I just heard you say it right then on the spot. When everybody asked me how I was doing, and every coach I'd ever had, every person kept asking me what was wrong, I always kept pointing that this happened to me, and that happened to me, and they did that to me, and they did that to me. And when I was in that narrative loop, Troy, I was lost. That's where I was lost, friend. So if you're here listening to this and you're maybe trying to find this needle in the haystack, the needle for me was I was almost self-righteous in my explanation, trying to justify what happened to me because I was desperate for someone to tell me, Jeff, it wasn't your fault. But after I saw the light, so to speak, I realized that it was never about fault to begin with. It was just simply a part of my growing experience. And as soon as I let go of it as the totality of my identity and just accepted it, that this is the way it was, which I tell people all the time, Troy, this is not happening to you. This is happening for you. And oh my God, if you could just take your hands off of what you think it is, that's what you helped me do, Troy. You helped me take my hands off of what I thought it was so I could actually see what it was, which spurred my own healing. That's what I hear going on today as well. Yes?
Yes. I think for you, Jeff, you were working really hard to understand the not understandable. I didn't language that very well. I'm sorry, but you were trying to figure your way out of a box that had no opening at that point where you were. You were trapped in your story, and that story was bound to keep you safe.
Yes.
So we created an opening, and it was finding basically me kind of hollering at you of Jeff and doing a pattern interrupt to where you were and allowing you to get clear of, hey, nobody's breaking through because I got walls up. I'm in this story, and I've repeated it so many times. I'm going to pick on Paul for a moment. Paul did that too, for instance, and we all do it. So I appreciate Paul for being vulnerable with all of the whole group. I was my mom's therapist starting when I was 7. That's a story that defines how we show up emotionally, for instance. If we're willing to let some of that go, little bits at a time, new can come in. a new story, a new narrative, something a lot more constructive for what we want.
Yeah. So true, Troy. And I appreciate the correlation. And that's where I was at, guys. I was in my story. And my story was, but this was my calling. But this, every time Troy would ask me, Jeff, what happened? But this was my calling. Now, for me, it was a spiritual thing. It was a deep inward spiritual thing. So not only did I think that I had failed, quote unquote, me, but I thought that I had failed, quote unquote, God. This was a divine purpose for my life. How could it not turn out better than this? And every time Troy would try to poke me a little bit, which he does gently in his coaching program, but enough to know you've been poked, I kept saying, but Troy, you don't understand. But Troy, you don't understand. Come on, anybody in the house today, if anybody asked you what's going on in your life and you tried to explain and they would try to redirect you, you would say, oh, but you don't understand. Oh, but you don't understand. And that's where you had to shout loud at me, Troy, going, no, Jeff, you're the one that don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're the one that don't understand. We've got a couple more questions. Friends, I cannot believe that our hour is almost up. So don't go anywhere. The best is yet to come. We're right here. We're going to finish out strong. I want to get to Gita, and then I want to get to Janae. I appreciate your patience very much. Gita, you're on live again. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. I wanted to discuss about the fact that reality is that's what we're experiencing. I'm talking to you, we're sitting here, you're there, I'm here. That's real, that's the truth. If somebody asked me, where were you today, what time were you, like today at the 3:59 California, where were you? And I said, oh, I was swimming. I'm lying. So I was with you. But then they said one thing is that, are we responsible for others' happiness? It was a great point that they brought up about when I was a child and I had to calm the room so I feel safe. I have to make others happy if I wanted to feel safe and happy. So my question is, are we responsible for other people's happiness, or are we just responsible for our own happiness? Thank you.
Yeah.
So would you stay in the conversation with me? Because I have my own opinion on that. And I'll be honest, I have my own truth on that, but it doesn't mean it's your truth, to be clear.
That's right. Thank you. And I know the answer to that question, and I want your answer so I get to know your truth. Thank you so much.
Okay.
If you'd like to answer.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Troy, let's just kind of, just for the sake of time, I want to just kind of keep us on track. Janae has her hand,
Brevity.
and then we're brevity, and then we're going to let you bring some closing remarks before we let everybody go. So go ahead.
Perfect. No, we are not in charge of somebody else's happiness, because that target keeps moving. Their happiness keeps moving, and many people don't actually want to be happy. So you are in a futile effort to make them happy. Your job, maybe it's to make you happy. My judgment is my job is to help me to be content, because I can be happy and content. I can even be angry and content. That's my middle ground, is contentment. I have no control over anybody else's emotion.
Excellent answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Gita, for the courage. Everyone, thank you for staying with us. This is such a powerful conversation. Troy, they're already asking in the chat, can we get Troy back for round 2? I'm telling him we're lining it up, folks. Just hang tight. We are lining it up. Janae, you've been so patient. First of all, I want to honor you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for lighting up our chat so much with all of the nuggets you've been dropping there. Please join us. You're live with Troy and Jeff right here on Circles. It's all your space. Go ahead. Did we lose her? She was having connectivity problems, Troy, so we might have lost her right at that last moment. I'm so sorry about that. So kind of summarize for us, Troy. Kind of just go back through some of the highlights, those things that come to your heart. Give us some follow-up instructions, some tools that we can take with us so that when we do come back again for round 2, maybe we'll have some things to share with you that we've tried to implement from our session today. What are your thoughts? Close us out here.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. A few things. I want to come back to the idea of having a target, something that you're aiming at. If you're lonely, then the ask that's being made is for connection. If you, I'm going to, brevity.
Oh, you're fine. Go ahead.
Whatever it is that you're wanting, but only have the negative language around. I don't have this. I feel like a victim. I can't get there. I don't have the relationship. What does the relationship that you want look like? Do you know what you're after? What qualities does that person have? Clarity will be one of your biggest friends and allies in the pursuit of anything that you want in your life moving forward. Courage will be your companion on that journey, because for most of us, asking for and advocating for what we want isn't comfortable. And if our story is intense enough, especially as a child, it won't feel safe. Remind yourself, you're an adult. You work to largely create your safety. I won't use that as a blanket statement, but most of the time, we create our own safety. We also create our own harm. So please set targets for what you're after. Have somebody work with you that you can dialogue with. Please remember that we evolved in a tribe, in a clan, where we had friends and family around us all the time, and we got their opinion whether we wanted it or not. So find a support group, and that support group may be one person. Again, it may be a coach, a therapist, it might be a family member, it might be a friend. It doesn't matter, as long as they can stay open to what you're putting down, what you need to share.
Yeah.
And I think the third thing is, this is a journey. At the risk of being cliche, it is a journey, not a destination. You're going to hit bumps, potholes along the way. They're there to make you stronger. Jeff said it earlier. For all of you, I want to remind you, your agency comes when you can recognize that this is all being done for you, that all of those pieces of growth, all of those hardships are transition points where you get to make a choice as to, are you going to stay in the suffering and pain, or are you going to elevate up, even if it's just a little, and start moving towards something that feels just a little bit better. I'm going to leave it there, Jeff.
I so appreciate you, Troy. Thank you. Friends in the house, can you show some love to our guest today? Thank you so much, Troy, for being here. We all appreciate you. I've been a big fan of honoring, respecting voices, each of you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being courageous enough. I just saw in the chat, somebody put what a safe space they felt like they were in, Troy, to be able to share. And I don't think we could ever get any higher honor than that, for somebody to feel safe, not judged, just safe. I also am dropping in the chat. I have put, first of all, friends, listen, I have put Troy's website in the chat. He has a one-to-one call that you can schedule. If you see to do so, just please visit his website, reach out to him there. At the conclusion of our event, which is just in a minute, you're going to have a chance to send your feedback to Circles about this event. Will you please take time to do that? Tell him how important you believed it was. Share your thoughts and kudos for our guest today. And then also let us know if you would like to have round two, because that'll prompt our Circles team to go, we need to invite Troy to come back. I would also like to honor our friend Paul in the house. I just dropped his podcast. He didn't know I was doing this, and I didn't know I was going to do it. But again, I believe in honoring people who are voices in our world that are making a difference. So will you please check out his podcast as well? Troy, my friend, I can't thank the universe enough for meeting you. And I'm looking forward to having you back on the app on Circles again. Thank you for being our guest.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. And I want to thank each and every one of you for spending this hour with us. It speaks a lot about where you are in your journey. And I want to invite and encourage you to keep going, because I promise it's worth it. Reach out for support, get the love and support that you need, and keep going.
Reach out for support, get the love and support you need, and keep going. And you are worth it. Here's my challenge. On the count of three, we're all going to unmute ourselves and we're going to shout out, I am worth it. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Unmute yourself. Go.
I am worth
I
it.
I
am
am worth it.
worth it.
Oh, you made me smile so big. I can't stand, my cheeks are hurting. Thank you all. You've been live here on Circles with Jeff and Troy. Until next time, God bless you all. We'll see you right back here on the app. Good night, everybody.
Good night.